Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a quick review of another recently published book. I promise I don't just read new books or new releases, but so far that's all I'm really interested in at the moment. Today I am going to talk about Chain Gang All-Stars by Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. It was published, I believe, back in February or March, and I read it about a month and a half ago at the time of recording this, but even though it's been a while since I've read it, this is the type of book that can really sit with you for some time. I'm going to talk about that today. First, what is Chain Gang All-Stars about? It is a somewhat science fiction, like soft science fiction, literary fiction book at the same time, where in the not-so-distant future in the United States, wards of the state and criminals of the state as well can join this competition known as the Chain Gang All-Stars, where they will fight as gladiators to the death. And if they survive a certain amount of time, they can go free. So it is one way for them to lessen their sentence and to hopefully one day live as free people once again. In this book, we are going to follow multiple point of views, but for the most part, I'm only going to talk about two. Because the other point of views, if I talk about them, it could spoil a little bit too much about this book. I want to keep it, as spoiler free as possible, because I think I'm going to contradict myself in the future, but almost the less you know, the better with this book, because your expectations need to be in the right place, I think. So for the purpose of this review, I'm only going to talk about two point of views, and that's going to be Loretta's point of view and Hurricane Stack's. Both of them are going to be on the same chain or team in this case, and we're going to follow, for the most part, their journeys as they fight in other battles and they work towards ultimately their hopeful freedom near the end. I'm going to start with those two characters first. I really thought that these two characters were great. They really they foil one another pretty well as two. Loretta is very calm, collected, headstrong, and very much focused. She is the mother of their group. She's in charge of Hurricane Stacks and a number of other competitors, I want to say. I think it's like 5 other people on her chain, again, team. And Hurricane Stacks is going to be the complete opposite. Again, they're foils. And she is the more lively, energetic. Her whole role in this story is to really wow the crowd. And they both, again, are polar opposites with that. Loretta wants to just get into the arena, kill someone just because it needs to be done. And Hurricane wants to get into the arena, have fun, get people to love her, and she wants to really entertain as well. Both of those opposing viewpoints are done very well. I thought that was probably the strongest part of this book. So if you are looking for a book with two great point of views, look no further than this book. I thought that part was really excellent. Another part that I thought was really strong in this book, again, would be the themes in general. It's really tough to talk about this book. I think I don't want to spoil my complete review yet, but it is almost impossible to enjoy this book, to be completely honest with you. Because it is very brutal, it is very realistic, it is very hard to read at times because of the themes and the subject matter. This book is really about, race relations in the United States. It's about, our treatment of criminals, our treatment of wards of the state. How do we, treat them as less than human, even if, it's someone who is a, just awful criminal, have done the worst things. Right, that is very tough for a lot of people to talk about, including myself. Reading this, it did make me feel uncomfortable at times. It really made me question my own thoughts and opinions about things. But I thought that was a great thing to discuss. Right, this book, again, I think impossible to enjoy, but really insightful as well. This book, it does something a number of times throughout this novel where when something major happens in the story, Adjei-Brenyah, the author, he would include a footnote in his chapters or in certain pages of actual cases in the United States and are real life right, in our own history of events that are also very similar to what is going on in the novel. So I also appreciate the opportunity to learn as well while I was reading this book. So it does have, again, science fiction elements, but it does also have historical background with the footnotes. I thought that was a great way to, really drive home a lot of the themes too. I do also want to talk about one of the, I don't want to say strange, but one of the weaker parts of this novel. And I think at the end of the day, it was maybe done on purpose, where, again, tough to enjoy this book. But the most enjoyable parts of this book, I hate saying this, again, this is why I think it's done on purpose, as a way to force the readers to think about their own thoughts and opinions. But the most enjoyable parts for me, as I was reading this, were the action scenes. I hate saying it, but the action was well written. Very gory, very bloody, though. So if you don't enjoy that, maybe stay away from this book. But that was probably the best part. Not the best, the most entertaining part. And I do think that might be a weaker part because it does kind of come in conflict with some of the themes where you're sitting there reading it, and at least I was, and I'm just thinking, am I really supposed to enjoy, Hurricane Stax cutting off some guy's legs? Am I supposed to enjoy Loretta using her warhammer to crush open some skulls? Am I really supposed to enjoy people being tortured? It did make me feel uncomfortable, but again, I do think it was done on purpose by the author, and I do have to give him credit, but again, I did see that as criticisms from other people, and I think that is worth mentioning, that there was sort of a tonal conflict at times where, are you supposed to actually root during the action? I don't think so, but that was the most entertaining parts, I would say, because the rest of the novel, again, I'm not going to talk about a lot of the point of views other than Loretta and Hurricane Stax, but there are, I want to say, like 6 other point of views, and that is a lot. The novel does have issues with pacing, and I think it does have issues with telling a clean story, but again, probably done on purpose because of how the story begins to wrap up near the end, where the multiple point of views do come together. But it does muddle it. It does make it feel very drawn out at times. So it did make it tough to read at that parts too, where it was really slow at the beginning and really slow at the middle. Another thing that I want to talk about, another potential weakness with this book, I do feel like you need to set your expectations with this book. When I picked it up, I knew nothing about it except from what I read on the dust jacket, and I thought, oh man, okay, it's going to be very futuristic. It has very light sci-fi, so if you're looking for hard sci-fi, this isn't the book for you. But the sci-fi parts are done pretty well, I would say. They don't go into a lot of explanations with some of the technology. I'm kind of glad they don't, because most of the technology is used for torture of the criminals, and that part was also tough to read. But one part that I do feel like maybe knowing a little bit more about this part would help some expectations, and that was how the first third of the novel really focuses on this mystery about what happened to Loretta and Hurricane Stax's, one of their former teammates. What happened to this person? I was really intrigued with the mystery, and turns out the what happened wasn't very important. That was thrown away pretty early on. It did feel very disappointing reading it at first, but I began to appreciate it more once I realized that it's not about the what happened, but why did this happen. And I think if you have your expectations for the mystery to be more about why something happened, I think you might enjoy it a little bit more. Finally, I want to talk about one other part that I've seen people criticize, maybe, but it is the ending. I'm not going to say what happens at the ending, but again, expectations, right? You got to have your expectations. I've seen the ending be criticized because it is very abrupt. I don't think there's going to be a sequel to this book. I don't think it's possible to have a sequel. And when I first read this book, I was also disappointed with the ending. But I read it a month and a half ago, and this book has stuck with me for that entire month and a half since I finished it. And my original thinking about how I would end this story, I realized was very cliche, and I realized it was a trope, right? And I realized more and more later on that the way that this book ends is really the only way it can end. And I realized probably about last week, actually, when I thought about reviewing this book, that the ending was perfect for what it was. It's very powerful. I don't think there's any other way to end this book, but I will at least acknowledge that there are criticisms. The ending may not be for everybody, but the more I've sat on it, the more I have actually really enjoyed it. And I think that's really going to be my thoughts and opinion about this book and all, because when I first finished it, I was prepared to give it 3, maybe 3.5 stars. But the more I've thought about this book, the more I really do feel like it is an important book to read this year. If you were looking to read any new book, new release in literary fiction or even soft sci-fi, it probably should be this book if you are interested in any of the themes, right? It really challenged me, and even though it wasn't enjoyable at all times, I really do think, again, it was very powerful and very important, especially with my thoughts. One thing that I do want to talk about, and I'll probably finish on this, because I'm recording this on a Sunday, and one theme that I want to talk about very quickly, and this book really challenges how we think about athletes as well, not just criminals, but athletes in combat sports. Again, I'm recording this on a Sunday. Just last night, I watched a UFC fight card, and boy, does this book have commentaries on how we treat athletes, especially of combat sports. I'm a big fan of the UFC. I'm a big fan of football, right? And how we as a society treat our athletes, it is a little disturbing. If someone isn't performing well or they're injured, they're not hopefully getting killed like in this book, but if someone is injured or they don't perform up to our standards, we begin to throw them away. We begin to throw away our stars and our idols pretty quickly. And this book does a pretty good job at talking about that. And that's why I woke up this morning and realized I do want to review this book, because I just watched again UFC last night, and Dustin Poirier just got knocked out. Spoilers for that. I should be posting this like a week after the fight though, but it made me really think about that. How do we treat not just our criminals but our athletes? And I thought very powerful stuff. So if you are at all interested about that, please read this book. And if you do end up reading this book, please let me know what you think about this. I recorded this all in one take. I don't know how long I've been going, so I'm going to wrap it up right there. And hopefully I'll see you in 10 days, but if not, I'll see you whenever. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.